Good evening. Hi, I'm Miriam Oakley. I'm the head teacher at Sherburn High School, and welcome to our first ever attempt at a live Q&A session around transition. And with me tonight, I've got Andy Stanton, who's my assistant head in charge of transition. The way we're going to do this evening is we've got some questions you've already submitted to us, and we're going to talk through the answers to those, and then hopefully during this evening you'll tap in some further questions and we'll work through those. The other thing that we're going to do is we'll put together a frequently asked questions sheet on our transition page up on our website, because I'm sure that lots of you have got better things to do than to stick around for the full hour, or you might be joining us late or didn't, have thought of a question and you want to email it in after the event. That's absolutely fine. I want to start really though with an apology. What I really wish is that you were able to come into school yourselves. I think the greatest selling point about life at Sherburn High School is my staff and students, and it's just really sad that you can't come and see them in the school day. Because of COVID, I'm not able to offer that, and it's really sad we've not been able to have an open evening. What I hope is that if you haven't already, you visit the website, that you go on and you watch the videos, because I think you get a little glimpse of life at Sherburn High School through the videos, and also start following the school on Twitter. Start visiting the website and looking at the letters home, because I think you'll get a lot of a sense, a feel about life at Sherburn High School, a feel for our vision and ethos if you do those things. So I'm going to pass over to Mr. Stanton, who's going to talk you through how transition at Sherburn High School works.
Hello, everybody. So in terms of kind of how transition would normally work, we start from around March time, the National Offer Day, and where we start talking to primary schools. So what we'll do straight away is we'll liaise with the Year 6 teachers, and we'll arrange times to come into school and to meet the students and to also speak to the teachers, because they're the key people who know the most about the students, and about your sons or daughters. How it would normally work is we have 3 days which they would attend before the September. So those 3 days are normally at the beginning of July, and how that would work is they would have a day or so of kind of orienteering around the site, getting used to the site, getting used to some key members of staff, and getting used to each other as well, because we take from between 10 and 15 feeder primary schools. So most of the time students only know a very small number of other students. So we make sure that they get some time together and get to know each other. So that kind of happens before summer, and that's really important, because then that means when it comes to September, they're straight in and they're ready to go. And one thing we do is in those 3 days before summer, they get to experience real lessons. So they will follow their timetable for at least 2 of those days. So they get straight in and they get to experience what it's like at secondary school. The reason we do that is we feel it really alleviates the anxiety that can build up over summer. Because obviously they've got different teachers, they're in different classrooms around school, and those 3 days just act as a really good buffer and mean that students can enjoy their summer knowing that when they come back, they know where their form room is, they know who their English and maths teachers are, and they just have a better understanding of how school works and what it's like at secondary school compared to primary school. So this year we've taken 160 Year 7s, and what we will do is, because I know some people have asked about how many will there be in the intake. So we're growing in terms of our numbers. So we expect it to be at least kind of that number going into next year too. So as a secondary school, I suppose we're relatively small in terms of our numbers. I know it's a lot bigger than a primary school, but actually that's one thing that people normally say is a big bonus, and that's why a lot of parents actually feel comfortable with us and secure the fact that we are smaller, so that we do get to know students more easily, and they don't get kind of lost in the system as they sometimes do at bigger schools. So I'm going to hand back over to Miss Oakley.
I think as well, just if I was listening, I'd be thinking, oh, that sounds lovely, Mr. Stanton, but what did you do? Because I know that our new Year 7s weren't able to come in July because the school was in lockdown. And so what we did to make sure that they still didn't miss out, that they still weren't frightened, is where possible, me and Mr. Stanton joined their classroom via Google, via Zoom meetings. We had lots of fun being interviewed by the students, put on the spot about what life at secondary school was like. And Mr. Stanton and my Senko met up with all the teachers in the virtual world, but they still had those really important transition meetings so that we got to know as much about the students who were joining us in September as possible. And the other thing we did was at the start of the year, and we will always do this, is on the very first day, the only children in school are Year 7 and Year 11. And that gives Year 7 a real chance to learn where the toilets are, how to get your dinners, how to move from one room to another in a safe, sensible way. And I think that really helps, even though the Year 7s didn't have those days in July, certainly they've settled in really brilliantly and feel very comfortable and confident at secondary school now. We've also had quite a few questions asking us around the group sizes. So I will admit the school admits up to 170 students. As Mr. Stanton said, we're growing. So this Year 7 is our largest intake. It's at 160 students, and they're split into 6 tutor groups, and they are mixed ability tutor groups. And we organise them so that there's an equal number of boys and girls. Mr. Stanton spends a lot of time making sure that there's a mixture of children who've come from a variety of schools in those tutor groups. We do take into account some friendship groups, but we also spend a lot of time talking to class teachers about who would need a fresh start, who would really benefit from being in a different combination. We've got twins in our current Year 7 and throughout the school, and we talk to parents and carers saying, do you want your twins to be together or do you want them separate? Because I know it's not the same for every family. So a lot of care and time is taken about putting those groups together.
I know some of you watching as well will have sons or daughters that are in really small primary schools. So we take from some of the small primary schools where maybe 2 or 3 students will come. So what we do is we obviously make sure that they're catered for and they're looked after, and we don't just kind of disperse those students around. We make sure that they have somebody there who they know. Because obviously the last thing we want is for them to be worried about the situation, for them to feel like they don't know anybody, and obviously that makes it more daunting. So yeah, a lot of thought goes into those groups, and this year it's worked really well, having those groups, and those groups have settled.
And finally, of course, as a parent and carer, you may feel, oh, it's really different. I take them to school at primary school. I'm there to collect them. I get to speak to their teachers. And you might suddenly feel like all of this is taken away from you. And one thing we always do, apart from last year, obviously, is we have a welcome evening. So during those 3 days in July, we invite parents and carers into school. We show you some of the stuff your kid has got up to during those taster days, and we talk to you about some of the practicalities, things like uniform, equipment, the school planner, all of those things, and we provide that information as well in the booklet form for you so that you can take it home and read it at your leisure over the summer holidays. I've had quite a few questions as well around SEND provision and what we do for people who might have special needs. And rather than, I think the most important thing is that's why our Senko goes with Mr. Stanton to meet with the class teachers so that we gather as much information as possible before young people arrive. For children who've got an education healthcare plan, Mrs. Atkinson starts to attend their annual review meetings once we know they're coming here, again, so that she knows as much as possible and that all the provision for those children is in place when they join us in September. For children who don't have an education healthcare plan, but who may have some identified special need. We run a variety of intervention. So we run intervention for literacy, for dyslexia, for children who've got social and emotional needs. We run bespoke intervention, and some of that takes place in their lessons. So it might be that there's a teaching assistant assigned, or it takes place outside their lessons, either one-to-one or in small groups. And I did know that, I remember that there was a question about somebody very worried that their child might struggle in some of the social times. And I think it's important that our support isn't just in lessons. We also run support for children during lunchtime. So it might be that we arrange for them to go to one of our centres at lunchtime because they might struggle with the noise or the busyness of the main school at lunchtime. Or we might set up support remotely where we've got teaching assistant who might be supporting one child at lunchtime, but actually they're keeping an eye on a group of children at lunchtime. Normally our library's open. Lots of children find that a really nice place to go and spend their lunchtime. And we also have a variety of clubs that take place at lunchtime. So it's not one size fits all. We work very closely with families, we work very closely with their primary schools so that we're able to put in place a package of support for when your child starts in September.
We've had lots of questions. If you could see us glancing up, the reason we're glancing up is because this is where the questions are appearing. So you do have the capability on the live event to ask some questions. So I know some of you have done that beforehand, and that's great because we've got these kind of printed off in front of us. But there is an option on your device to ask us questions too. So if we're looking up, it's to see some of these extra questions which are coming through. So we've had quite a few questions about extracurricular, and I know a lot of them are kind of laced with that caveat after COVID or post COVID. So what I'll do is I'll talk about some of the offers we have in kind of a normal situation. So lots of questions about sports teams. So even though we're a relatively small PE department, I know compared to some of the other larger secondary schools, we offer a vast kind of we have a very diverse number of sports. So during the curriculum, we have things like handball, we have table tennis, we have athletics, we've got gymnastics, football, hockey, rugby. So basically we cover lots and lots and lots of sports. And for most of those sports, we have extracurricular activities which go with them too. So I know we compete at basketball. We compete at all the sports that you'd expect schools to compete at as well. So we compete at cricket, football, boys and girls football, rugby, boys and girls rugby, netball, athletics when it comes to summer. But then we do have kind of other clubs that appear from time to time as well if there is a student demand for it. So if we've got a particular year group who are really into a particular sport, then we can sometimes take that and kind of run with it too. Now there are other extracurricular activities as well as kind of sports and PE. So every year we like to pride ourselves on having an excellent production, kind of with drama and music, and the past few years we've had. I remember a few years ago it was We Will Rock You. We've had Joseph. We were planning on having Bugsy Malone last year, which unfortunately got postponed. But so every year there is the opportunity for year 7 right the way through to 6th form to get involved in that. And what I always say to parents is it's not just the on stage, it's actually the backstage as well. We have people doing music, we have people doing lighting, we have people actually doing prop design and stage design. So that's a massive area that we like to work on every single year, and it involves 40 to 50 students sometimes from lots of different year groups. Looking at other subjects too, we have a film club which is run quite successfully. We've had a science Big Bang club which is run on a lunchtimes, looking at kind of interesting experiments. There are lots and lots. I'm sure I've forgot lots and lots of others as well. But we offer, even though even though the kind of the staffing numbers sometimes don't give us the massive flexibility for it, we do offer quite a diverse range of extracurricular and after school activities.
I think one of the key differences from primary school in terms of extracurricular is this, that there are no set numbers of, so it's, if 50 year sevens want to go to football, they can. If 30 year sevens want to go to the science club, they can. It's not a first come, first served, and all our extracurricular activities are free. And that's really important. And I really stress to people, just because you didn't do something at primary school, just because you've never done netball or you've never done hockey, it's really, really welcome to all of you to come and have a go at something. Good. Now, right, having thought there were no questions, I can now see lots of questions. I hope there's some of you who are saying that you can't manage to hear and see things. I hope that's now been resolved. I've got a technician here, he's working very hard. I'm guessing lots of you can, just by the number of questions that's been asked. But as I've said, we will put something together on our website with all the questions that have been asked, with the answers. So if there is any technical difficulties for you, don't panic, because you will still find out the answers to the questions. I've also had a question pop up about what we do in terms of the curriculum and languages, and asking what languages we learn at Sherburn High School. So at the moment, the language that everybody learns is French, and that's right through year 7, right up to those who want to pick it for A level. And that's the language. We don't offer lots of different languages, because we're really about developing our young people from that year 7 right up to year 13. And so becoming a specialist in delivering French is what we've gone for, so that we get children picking it for A level. Mr. Stanton.
Sorry, I'm just, I've got an eye on the questions. One thing, coming back to form groups, because I know we've spoken about forms, but just to make it clear, what we've got, how we work with form groups is, in the past, what we've done is something called vertical tutor groups, which is where we've had a mixture of different year groups in the same form group. This year, we've gone to a whole year group. So forms having the same year group in there. So that will be moving forward to next summer as well. So what will happen is, in terms of form groups, they will be just year 7 students. And as we mentioned earlier, it's not necessarily a big friendship group. In terms of in that form, we use the primary school teachers' kind of best opinion, best kind of evidence base in terms of who is best to be in that form with them. And as I said before, we use the information we get about, well, who should we put in there? Let's make sure that so-and-so is coming from a small primary school. They're only coming with this other person. Let's make sure they're together, so that we actually know that they know at least one other person in that form group.
Just see a question that's come up where somebody's asked about their child being a different religion, and their child is worried about being bullied or concerned about how we deal with that. So we talk a lot about being part of a team, and I think that's really important. Our ethos here is that you join here and you're part of Team Sherburn, and it's therefore really, really important that we treat everybody in our team with respect, with kindness and with understanding. And that filters through by what we call period 1. And period 1 is our time of the day where we are as a tutor group, and we study our personal, social, health, careers and sex education in period 1. And that's where we talk about diversity. That's where we talk about respect and kindness. And we explore all sorts of big ideas, big thoughts. At the moment, everybody's looking at a piece of work around well-being, because we know that there's a lot of concern about the impact of lockdown on young people and their mental well-being. And so I would like to think that we are extremely inclusive, and that somebody of a different faith would not have to feel worried or singled out, because actually they're part of Team Sherburn, and Team Sherburn look after one another. Somebody's asked, do I think we offer enough challenge for the very brightest children? I think if you look at the new GCSEs and the challenge of those GCSEs, we absolutely offer challenge to young people. And we've done an awful lot of work. One of the reasons we became part of a multi-academy trust was because I was very conscious that one of the things that we needed to improve was our curriculum in year 7 and 8, and make sure that when children were joining us, they weren't bored, they weren't saying, oh, well, I did that at primary school. And I wanted to really create a curriculum that was a continuity between Key Stage 2 into Key Stage 3 and upwards to Key Stage 4 and 5. So all the curriculum leaders have worked with their primary counterparts in writing and shaping our brand new Key Stage 3 curriculum. And we believe it's incredibly challenging. And we believe it's also supportive, because I know not every child comes to us on the same starting point. And so that's why we spent a lot of time last year, and we'll continue to this year, to really build that curriculum.
I think as well, in terms of stretch for the brightest, as the question was put, I think another way of kind of judging that is to look at outcomes. And I know if you were to look at the students that we have in sixth form who go on to Russell Group universities, so that's obviously a yearly feature. If you look from last year, the last year where we had actual GCSE results, which were sat rather than centre assessed grades, the number of grade 9s which we get in school. So I think, as well as Key Stage 3 is really, really important in terms of getting that right and making sure that work isn't repeated from primary school. As Ms Oakley said, we do that by working with the primary schools to find out what they're teaching. I think also you can see the challenge in our outcomes too, and what young people actually go on to do once they leave us in sixth form as well. And I think that brings us quite nicely onto the curriculum, doesn't it? And we were talking about how students would experience that at Key Stage 3. And actually, I mean, our school motto is achievement for all, and that's something that we really believe in, and we come back to quite a lot. And what we do is in year 7, because a lot of you ask this question, we have mixed ability groups. The only subject which we have sets in is maths. So every group, whether they're in English, whether they're in English, science, history, art, those groups are a mixed ability group, and they're put together based on the data that we get from primary schools, from the primary teachers, just to make sure that we don't have students that are in, because we know that there is a problem with setting at a really early age, because I know some of you will say, well, I've not been happy with the provision they've got at primary school, or that there might be certain extenuating circumstances. So that's why we don't like to set or stream. We believe that everybody has the right to this full curriculum, and actually the curriculum is something which we've expanded in the last few years, and we do have in year 7 we have a very, very broad curriculum in terms of what students experience. So as well as your obvious English, maths, science, geography, history, PE, there's art, technology, which includes product design, textiles, food in terms of cooking. But we have RE, we have ICT, music, drama. So we have such a vast array of subjects which are offered, because we know that those first few years at secondary school, when you're doing these subjects, it's actually the time where you develop a passion for them, and you actually want to then take them for GCSEs or then take them for A levels. So it's really important to us that students get a chance to experience those straight away from year 7.
I can see somebody's asked about bullying, and of course you have. I know my kids went to a tiny local village primary school, and the thought of coming up to secondary school was really daunting for them. They were frightened. I'm not going to lie, of course schools have bullies. We have some children who fall out with one another, and they get very upset by that. So what we do at Sherburn High School is I have 4 members of staff who are called our House Achievement Leaders, and they are non-teaching members of staff which is quite deliberate, because that means if somebody is upset, if they're worried, and it might not be anything to do with bullying, it might be to do with they forgot their planner or they've lost their tie, these members of staff are on hand to look after them and support them. In terms of bullying, we want people to tell. And that's really important. Once we know, we can help you and we can sort it out. And we say to students, you can tell any adult in this school, or if you're worried about telling an adult, you're not sure which adult to tell, then we ask parents and carers to email us or to phone us, because once we have the information, we will sort it. And we always try first, to sort it working with young people. But if it persists, then of course we've got our behaviour policy with sanctions, and we will sanction, because we want ultimately this school's got to be safe and friendly for everybody. So there's no place for bullies at Sherburn High School, but we need to know so we can sort it out. And a very important question about lunch and what happens at lunchtime. So I've had a number of questions about that. I'll start with the sort of more serious side of lunchtime, which is that somebody's asked about food allergies and what happens if their child has got particular food allergies. Really lucky at Sherburn High School because we employ our own catering team and we have our own catering manager. So that means if you are a parent who's got a child with specialist dietary requirements, you're able to liaise directly with our catering manager and explain to her what your child's needs are. If it wasn't post, in this strange new normal that we're in, our offer in terms of food is we offer food before school. We run a breakfast service where it's not a breakfast club, anyone can come and they can buy things like, chocolate croissants and toast and very popular sort of things like that. We run a break provision normally with things like pizza and bagels. And then we run a lunchtime provision, which has hot food with a main meal every day. It has a salad option. It has paninis. It has jacket potatoes. And that's our normal provision. At the moment, because we're having to do staggered lunchtimes, the provision's slightly different. And the other thing that's really good is, although it's run as a sort of canteen style service, parents and carers can see what their child is eating, because you can log in and see what's been bought every day. So you might think, it's really brilliant that Mr. Stanton's come home and he's told me he's had a jacket potato and salad and I'm really impressed. But then you can log on and see, well, actually, Mr. Stanton bought 10 biscuits. He didn't have a salad at all.
That's quite realistic.
Well, it's just really helpful. It's really, really useful. So I've picked that up about catering.
There's a couple of questions actually about residentials and extracurricular. So we in the past few years we have run quite a lot of residentials. So there's residentials that take place within subject areas. So for example, I know geography do a residential trip, which is kind of linked to coursework, and I know French have done a trip to Lille and to Paris in terms of an actual residential staying away, and we've run trips to the Ardèche in France as well for like summer water sports and activities. So yeah, we have had residentials happening in the past. At the minute, they're not going ahead, and I suppose that's the same for every primary and secondary school, just following government guidance, and this kind of links in as well to people are asking the extracurricular clubs, are they running at the minute? When would they return? Things like that. Well,
I think I can address that really. So my priority, obviously, as you imagine, has been getting the safe return of young people to school. And so just like you will have at primary schools, the schools split up into learning zones so that young people can't cross in terms of year groups. And what we've worked really hard on is allowing specialist provision, specialist classrooms. So you can imagine here we've got bespoke workshops, we've got IT classrooms, we've got science labs, that we've tried to really increase access to those specialist classroom spaces as a priority. The next thing, because obviously when we returned, I think in our minds we were quite naive and we kind of thought, well, maybe this will just be for a term, but it doesn't look like that. It looks like this is how we're going to have to exist, at least for most of this academic year and maybe into next academic year. So every step of the way we're reviewing things and adding more. So my biggest drive is, in terms of the risk assessment, is to increase access to specialist rooms. We will then look at restarting some extracurricular. And it may be that that's quite limited to start off with, because we're used to running, Mr. Stanton said, a school show with students from years 7 to 13 in the school show. And obviously we cannot have that cross mixing of bubbles. So we're looking at how we would do that. In terms of school trips, I'm very keen. I love school trips. I think they're really important. Those are the things you take away and remember about school, even the sort of, what you had on a packed lunch and the coach journey. That's where memories are formed, and you get to know people in a whole different scenario. You get to know teachers differently. It's a lovely, lovely part of school life. DfE guidance says we cannot run any residential trips at the moment. If that changes, we will put some back on, but it doesn't stop us starting to think about day trips, and we're very keen to start to build those back in, not just to do with subjects, but to do with enrichment, to do with culture. One of the things that's been lovely at Sherburn High School is how many theatre trips we run. And then, Mr. Stanton, you forgot the best trip and most important trip for Year 7 is that we run a special Year 7 trip normally, which last year saw Year 7 sleeping out in the woods by Castle Howard with the bushcraft folk, and doing things like eating fish eyeballs and rescuing staff who had been caught in a plane crash, and dragging us to safety and building shelters for us. So as soon as we can put those back in, we will, because we really, really, really think they're important to life at Sherburn High School.
We've had some questions around well-being, and I know Miss Oakley spoke about well-being being part of our period 1, and obviously it's front and centre at the moment, particularly with the ongoing situation. What we had a specific question which I thought was really good, and it was actually how do teachers check in on students to ensure they're okay with everything day to day? Because it's always obvious when somebody has a big breakdown, but actually how do we check that everybody's okay? I thought it was a great question, and actually we've started doing a wellbeing journal with our students in period 1, and it's just some really simple questions just to check that they're okay. How are they feeling? What's their mood? And sometimes it's as simple as a sliding scale, just to make it really easy access, so they don't necessarily need to write anything down that might be confidential. And what we do with that is, and this has happened, I can use it as a concrete example. So there was a student in a Year 7 form who'd put down that they weren't feeling too good, and they'd rated themselves quite low down on the scale. So it was just a simple email from the form tutor to myself and a member of the pastoral team who could pick that up and then go and have a conversation with that individual just to check that they were okay. And as it turned out, they were just, it was just a temporary kind of blip, and they gave kind of reasons for that. But it just allowed us to, without that in place, it's sometimes very hard to actually see if there's an issue unless people are willing to speak out. So yeah, that is something which we're trying to build within our students, to talk about it more, and with our staff as well, and having the period 1 there does help with things like that too. It makes it easier to pick that up. We're also part of a pilot project with the National Health Service, where we have a wellbeing team on site 3 days a week, and they're working with us to develop our policy and practice around the whole idea of wellbeing, and they're able to offer sort of a consultancy service for
for staff who are working with young people who might be experiencing difficulties. They're able to offer some support to young people, and we're hoping that's quite exciting. That's just started in September, and that's something that we're quite excited about, because we know that for young people to be successful, they've got to have, you know, a well-being. That's really important to them. Somebody's also asked a question about low-level behaviour, and they said, what do you do? How does teachers combat that? We talk at Sherburn High School about two things. We talk about our relentless routines, and we think they're really important. So we talk about how we enter a classroom, how lessons begin, how a teacher gets silence in a classroom, what you're meant to have on the desk in a classroom. Because if we get the basics right, then actually we can squash any low-level disruption straight away. We have an on-call system for staff, so that if they're feeling that learning's being stolen or by an individual, that individual's removed and they're put in another classroom. Or if they continue to disrupt, they're actually put in isolation, and we meet with parents and carers. And then the other thing that we talk about is our sanction system, and students are very clear what the sanctions are, and they start really low level, as you'd imagine, you know, with a verbal warning, remind you about what our relentless routines are, that we don't expect you to steal learning from one another, because we're part of Team Sherburn and we're here to crack on with learning. And then they escalate up the sanction ladder to, as you can expect, you know, a detention, a period of time in isolation. And if it continues, well, then obviously we're not averse to looking at things like fixed term exclusion. I think it's really important that, and that's why I started this evening saying I'm really sad you can't come in, because actually this is a really calm school, this is a really friendly school, and that sort of calmness, and it pervades into, you know, everywhere. I'd like to show, because I'm really proud of the school, and I love showing parents around the building. It's lovely. One
thing that was quite interesting last year, so for the current Year 7 intake that are here now, I must have shown 10-20 families round in about this time last year, and one thing they commented on was how calm everything was, how purposeful everything was, and what they said actually shocked me, because they said, well, some other schools they won't show you around on a daytime because they're for maybe for some other reasons, but actually the fact that we were open and willing to show them what was going on, it is a very calm, it is a very purposeful place where students are learning. And I noticed a few people have asked about the pastoral system and the care which students receive, and we've got some new questions today about the houses and how the house system works and the colour of the ties. So for those of you that don't know, we have 4 houses at Sherburn, and for each of those 4 houses there is a non-teaching house achievement leader, and that house achievement leader is basically the point of contact, the person who will be that contact for you as well. So if your child comes in Year 7 and they go into Newby House, for example, Mrs. Smith, the house achievement leader for Newby, will be with them for the full 5 years that they have between Year 7 and Year 11. And that's true for siblings as well. So what that means is over the period of those 5 years, you hopefully build up a really good relationship with that person. And it's that one point of contact who you can talk to about any sensitive issues, if there's any family issues, if there's any known absences. And obviously those, they don't just sit in a 1 year silo. They continue, don't they, sometimes in terms of medical issues. So you're not having to repeat yourself and explain yourself over and over again. It's that one person who is that contact. So even though in Year 7 there will be 4 different colour ties because they're in their different houses, so Year 7 will be in each of the different houses, they each person will have a house achievement leader who will follow them through. But as well as having those as our kind of 4 house achievement leaders, We do have a pastoral team who look after well-being of students and who do one-to-one support with students, who can speak to them about their emotions, because we've had people asking questions about how do you care for students with emotional difficulties. Well, I know Miss Oakley talked about the team that we have in at the minute, the well-being team, who are going to be there too, but we have these extra pastoral staff who are trained in order to provide one-to-one support around emotions, controlling emotions, and making right decisions and things like that. So that is in place too, as well as the house achievement leaders.
And then completely change the topic. We've had quite a few questions about transport and the school buses. So I'll start with on the frequently asked questions page, we will put on there information in terms of the buses and the link. Some of you have asked, do I qualify for free bus travel? And the reality is we don't control that. That's controlled by North Yorkshire. So I'll put the link there on that page. And then somebody's asked, how will my daughter know which bus to get on at the end of the day? And I absolutely can understand, for lots and lots of Year 7s, this will be the very first time they've ever travelled independently on a bus to and from school. So it's obviously quite easy when you're leaving home because there's only one bus stop, but when you're leaving school, there are a number of buses up at the bus park, and there are always teachers there on duty. And so we're very, we make sure that we're there. Kids come up to, is this the bus too? Yeah, we can help you get onto the right bus. And there's not that many school buses. I think there's probably into five or six buses. So it's not, wow, gosh, there's, 20 school buses. No, there's 6 buses, and we will help you get onto the right bus. And what you'll learn very quickly is the name of your bus driver and which kids get on your bus with you. So that's really easy. Somebody's asked a question about how big, on average, how big the class sizes are. So as I said, the largest year group is our new Year 7s with 160. They're split into 6 tutor groups, equal numbers there. But as you move up the school and you start to choose your options subjects, then class sizes tend to be around 24 to 26 students, unless this year we've reintroduced music GCSE, for example, and that class size is a lot smaller. And then, as you can imagine, at A level, class group sizes are even smaller. Apart from maths and biology, I think, which are really, really, really popular as A-level subjects here. And we have as many as 30, I think I've got 30 Year 12s currently doing A-level maths, and around 22, 24 doing A-level biology. And in terms of our A-level provision, because there have been some people thinking about the future, which is brilliant, we have a combined sixth form with Tadcaster Grammar School, and we've done that quite deliberately and over a large number of years now. And we've done it so that we can offer, even though we don't have a huge school, it means we can offer lots and lots of subjects. So, for example, we run lots of really traditional A-levels, as you'd imagine, like you've just heard me talk about biology and maths, but it also means we can do things like law, psychology, photography, media, economics, further maths, because children can travel during the school day for free on our minibus that transports them up and down between sites. So it's a really, really rich and varied curriculum offer at A level.
Just off the back of that as well, some people have asked about GCSE subjects. So without obviously naming the really obvious ones, so we've obviously got the maths, English, science, geography, history, PE, French, which is offered. We've got textiles, we've got art, photography, food. We've got product design, IT,
computer studies, business studies, not media, statistics. And what's important, because I always get a bit worried about telling parents, this is what we're offering now. Actually, your child's joining us in Year 7, and every single year we review the curriculum offer. And we're really lucky, if your child had joined us 4 years ago, there wouldn't be music GCSE. There is now music GCSE. If they'd joined us 4 years ago, there wasn't statistics GCSE. There's now statistics GCSE. So our vision and our dream is to really offer, as rich and varied a curriculum model, right from, GCSEs up to A level.
So going back to some of the questions that we've had submitted, we've got some questions about Sherburnes. So obviously some people have heard about the Sherburnes. So we have many kind of systems within school for reward. So we have, because somebody's mentioned about actually how do we get in touch with parents, and actually the question was about how do we get in touch with parents if there is an issue. But I'll talk about getting in touch with parents in a positive sense as well, because it can be similar channels. So talking about the issues side of things. So as I mentioned about the house achievement leaders, so they will get on the phone and they'll give you an email, whichever is most convenient, because I know if you're at work, sometimes a phone call is not the most convenient. As I mentioned, because they are non-teaching members of staff, they have the flexibility to do that. Whereas teachers, because I know going back a few years, we used to have teaching heads of years. That wasn't always possible. So that's why we have non-teaching house achievement leaders who will make that almost instant contact if something is serious. In terms of how we reward students and how we praise good behaviour and praise good work and good effort, we have many different channels. So we have a teacher phone call home, teacher email home. We have our Super Sixes, which we do weekly, where students get a Super Six nomination if they've done particularly well. Then on Friday, period 6, hence the Super Six, they exchange their slip for a little treat. It's
lovely. We get to visit every class with our box of treats, and then they get put in a lucky dip, and we have a Super Six lucky dip where prizes are awarded from there. And it's a lovely end to the week. It's my highlight of the week, is getting round to every class and seeing what they're up to. It's really, really lovely.
And the next layer above that is termly celebration assemblies, and then the very pinnacle, so bringing it back to the start, the very pinnacle is the Sherburnes, and so for the Sherburnes, you get nominated into it. So for every subject, so for science there'll be some nominations, so the teachers actually submit the nominations and they submit a reason why. So those nominations, just like at the Oscars, those nominations will get read out, and then there's an overall winner for each subject. So it's a really nice evening. It's one of the best evenings of the year, because it's a really great opportunity to see all the successes that have taken place in that year.
We've got some questions again around how we group students, and we've got 2 questions that I think I can answer around that. So Mr. Stanton explained that in year 7 we have mixed ability groupings apart from in maths, and we sustain that mixed ability grouping through most of the school, apart from in science. We start to set in science, and we set in English as well as we move into GCSEs. But for the other subjects, we teach in mixed ability. And somebody then asked, well, does it really matter what their SATs are? And I think that's children are more than the sum of an outcome of Key Stage 2. And actually, SATs are important for schools because they track the value that we add to young people. But actually, what's just as important is how well your attendance at school. Are you a good friend to young people? Do you stick up your hand and answer questions? That's what we're in the business of trying to find out from working with your class teachers. And somebody said, but what if there's somebody in their class and they've never got along with? What do you do about that? Well, that's why Mr. Stanton spends so much much time speaking to class teachers saying who needs a fresh start from one another, and we are big enough with 160 in an intake to be able to say, okay, we're not going to put you in the same class, and neither are we going to put you in what we call the same half of the year. And when we get to lessons like PE, where the whole half of a year group get together for those lessons, well, you're not doing PE at the same time as somebody that you've never got on with. So we take a lot of time thinking about that. And then I can see somebody asking about swimming lessons. So you might not know, or you might be very aware of, because some of you might have come to learn to swim here. We have a swimming pool at Sherburn High School, but we also had a fire, and the fire burnt down our gym. And so whilst the gym was out of action, and it's still out of action, we were able to only offer swimming lessons to our primary school, local primary schools. We weren't able to have access to the swimming pool in the school day in relation to changing rooms for students at Sherburn High School. I am delighted that finally this week the rebuild of the burnt down gym has begun. At the moment, there's nothing exciting to show you. It just looks like some sort of huts, and some temporary car park has been laid. But my understanding, and this is the deadline they're working towards, is that the new gym, which includes new changing rooms, will be finished by the end of May. And that will then allow us to review our curriculum offer. And we would look to be putting back swimming lessons for students in year 7 and 8 in some shape or form from September next year. So, that's something really exciting. And because I can see somebody asking about investment. I mean, obviously that's been covered by the insurance company. What we're investing in this year is all around remote learning and ICT facilities, because it taught us a lot last year. Lockdown absolutely taught us how important it is to make sure that all my staff have access to IT at home, and top quality access at home, and that all students have access to ICT resources at home. So recently we've launched a Chromebook lease to own scheme with young people. We've invested heavily in our Wi-Fi facility. We've invested in staff training around Google Classrooms and delivering live learning, so that we're kind of future-proofing curriculum continuity for everybody.
Yeah, and somebody's asked a specific question about do students need a laptop? Do they need to submit work electronically, or is it paper-based? Because I know some schools probably have gone 100% electronic, and maybe even some primary schools have. So at the moment, it is not a necessity. Because we understand at this moment in time, not everybody has that equity of access, so it wouldn't be achievement for all if we were saying everything has to be submitted electronically. So at the moment, there is still paper hand-ins in terms of homework, but as Miss Oakley said, we are kind of preparing ourselves in a way that we are future-proofing ourselves. We are putting our lessons online. We're collating the bank of work which is up there. We are letting students access the work from home if they need to, so they can submit electronically. However, for many lessons it is just business as usual, and handing things in on paper, because we don't want to disadvantage anybody.
And more than anything, students have to learn to write in exams. So the power of the pen, and I mean, I'm biased because I'm an English teacher, but it's really important that people have legible handwriting and that they're used to writing. So we certainly would want to do that. Somebody's asked an important question about how do we track the children in the middle, and I don't want you to think that this is a school where we only care about the top end, or we only care about the bottom. Think back to that school motto: it's achievement for all. We regularly assess young people and track their progress and intervene with all young people to find out why they're not making progress as they should be, and celebrating everybody's individual achievement. You've got personal targets. You run your own race, is what I say to the students in assembly. It's not a competition against everybody else. It's a competition with yourself. And do you do the best you can possibly do? So every student counts. It's not about not looking at those that are in the middle. We look at all young people and we push them all to be the very best versions of themselves.
We've had a few questions about transgender students. And this isn't something new for us, because this is something we've dealt with over a few years. And I can honestly say, because this is the third school I've worked in, that the students are so accommodating and so inclusive and so understanding that I've not seen any issues with this. We obviously have practical issues around things like changing rooms, but we do have provision for that as well in terms of getting changed at PE time. But we have had pronouns being changed like in the middle of the year. Teachers obviously take that in their stride, but students seem to take that in their stride too.
I think it comes back to this idea of bespoke provision. You know, they're not all children are the same, and not all children learn the same way. Not all children have the same experience at school, and so we work with you as a family to work out what's going to work for your child, and that might change during their time at Sherburn High School, but we try to put in place something that's bespoke, that's unique for you.
Sorry, just scrolling through. There's quite a lot of questions. There's quite a lot of questions to go through. We've had some questions about kind of the food and allergies, but I think we've touched upon
and somebody's
that.
Asked in terms of cooking, and you know, what do we do in terms of children who are allergic? We've got a brilliant DT department here. They'll work with families. We've got children, you know, who carry EpiPens around with them because they're nut intolerant. We change the curriculum so that they're not exempt. They don't have to sit outside. We want everybody to get a chance to do cooking and to taste the lovely food that they make. So we can accommodate that. We can support that.
So a lot of people are asking kind of simple structural things about lessons in the day and homework and things like that. So what we can do is we can publish some frequently asked questions and things like that, which are quite straightforward for us. We can probably just do that quite easily.
We call it a 6-period day. That's because the first part of the day is that half hour with your tutor group. And then all of our other lessons last an hour. At the moment, because we're having to run a staggered break and a staggered lunch and a staggered start and a staggered end, it looks a little bit different. So what I propose is that in the frequently asked questions page, I will show you what a normal school day looks like. And then, of course, if you choose Sherburn High School and your child joins us in September, we'll send you what their school day will look like. Then and there.
So just having a quick scan through. Oh yeah, there's a good question about do Year 7s have any areas in school just for them, or is there less areas, or do they get free roam of everywhere? So how it would normally work, and I'm sure it's like this at primary at the minute. It's very different to how it would normally work because. As I say, it's probably like this at primary as well, because at the moment, students have a particular area that is their area. So the Year 7s are in a particular area of school, and actually, as it stands, the students are taught in that area. They're able to go outside at lunchtime, which is great. If this was a normal year, if next year is a normal year, then yes, they do have full. Kind of I want to use it. Try and find a better word. Roaming. They can use the full school site, and actually we've got quite a big site, and it means that lunchtime and at break time, students can find their own space, which we find is a lot better than being cramped up in a corridor or inside a hall. So what we do though is the main anxiety, because having done this a few years, the main anxiety from students is about getting lost. That's the thing that comes through over and over and over again, which is why in the 3-day transition before summer, part of that is about knowing your way around school. Can you follow your timetable and get to the right places? But it's unbelievable, the support of the students in the first few days. The older students, it's because they were part of this ritual where when they were year sevens, other students would stop and show them and take them to their lessons, and it's really lovely to see. It only takes a few days, as in like the first few days of it happening, but the support that they give to the year sevens is amazing, isn't it?
I think one other sort of reassuring thing is, because we've got quite a lot of space on site, what we're able to do is have different toilets for different year groups. And I know some year sevens are a bit like, oh, I'm a bit scared to go to the loo. There's a big year 11 there. But actually, we have key stage 3 toilets that are just for lower school students. And I think that's quite reassuring for them. So it's really weird to speak and not be able to see an audience. It's really, really awful that we can't have you in school. I mean, obviously, government guidance is changing. We know that all the time. So if it changes to the point where I can have people come and visit us, where we can do a sort of open evening event, or at least a sort of assembly event, then we'll put them on. I'd really love you to come and visit Sherburn High School and see it for yourself. But in the meantime, if you haven't already, please go and watch the videos on the Transition website, and come and visit, join us on Twitter, and also visit the Transition page later in the week. It won't, we're now on Wednesday. It's going to take a while. You've sent so many questions and we haven't been able to answer some of them tonight. I would say that by sort of Monday or Tuesday next week, the frequently asked questions will be on the website, and I'll tweet it so that you know when it goes live. So there's an incentive to join us on Twitter. So thank you.
Good night.
I hope it's been useful.
See you later.